What's going on, Colts Nation? With free agency set to begin tomorrow, or at least the tampering period, and some free agents have already signed with different places and have had conversations with different places, guys visiting different places. It's time to talk about one of the Colts guys, somebody that we talked about before, but there's a lot more to talk about with what's happened recently. If you've been paying attention to NFL news, then you know the Ravens signed their defensive tackle, Justin Matabuke, to a massive contract, and he's going to be getting 4 years, $98 million with $53.5 million guaranteed at signing. So he's getting a bunch of money guaranteed. Practical guaranteed is $75.5 million. What does that mean? Who knows? But Justin Matabuke gets broken off by the Ravens defensive tackle who had a really good season. I believe he had 11 consecutive games this past year where he had at least half a sack, which I believe is an NFL record, or at least an NFL record for defensive tackles, something along those lines. But he had an incredible year, especially for a defensive tackle, and a defensive tackle as big as he is, being able to move the way he does. The Ravens got a good one. Okay, and they were able to lock him back up. Now, also, Chris Jones does re-sign with the Chiefs, and all the details about his contract have not come out yet. I do know it's worth 5 years with practical guarantees of $95 million. Okay, so for Chris Jones, I would assume his contract is more in the neighborhood of probably like 5 years, 125, right? To where he's making $25 million a year. Might be making more than that. But when you look at it, Quinnen Williams last season got paid at $24 million a year. Then Matabuke gets paid, gets an extra $500,000 a year. I would assume Chris Jones another $500,000 a year on top of that, but he gets 5 years, so $125 million is what I'm guessing his contract looks like. So right now, defensive tackles are getting big time money. Okay. Now the thing is with these guys are getting big time money because they rush the passer. So the more you're able to do, the more you're going to make. I feel like that just makes sense, right? We can all get behind the idea of that. So when you look at, I want to go back through, kind of look at what Grover Stewart has done for the Colts in his time. And when you look at it, he's been with them for 7 years at this point. He has 9 total sacks. That's really what this conversation revolves around. Now, 2022, it was his best season, even though defense, they played a lot. So it makes sense that he has his best year and he has more statistics in that season than any before. But in that 2022 season, he had 70 tackles and had 4 sacks. 4 sacks is the most in his career. He had 3 sacks back in 2019. So if we're sitting here going by the numbers, 2022 is the best year. And you could say, well, what have you done for me lately? And last year, he was suspended. So there is that argument. But also, you go watch the film. Grover Stewart was as dominant last year as he's ever been, right? He doesn't get to the passer. He had a half a sack last year. Of course, we know he missed 6 games. He ends up with 41 tackles, but his impact is always felt, right? Especially with him being next to DeForest Buckner, right? You're going to have to double team one of them. And I feel like he was so dominant that he drew a lot of the double teams, which is why DeForest Buckner, game by game, was able to have more of an impact through the season, right? DeForest Buckner took a little bit of a step back for 6 games without Grover Stewart. So there is that part of this argument where if we need DeForest Buckner to be that guy and to keep going off, then Grover Stewart has to be there. But this is where I'm at, okay? It's because Grover Stewart has been making $10.25 million a year on average, $10.25 million on the contract that he's been playing on. And with the defensive tackle market where it is, I think that there's an obvious way you can see Grover Stewart probably going to be right around that $10.25 million mark again. So would it be worth it? Maybe, right? With the salary cap going up, you add some numbers to that. You're probably looking at Grover Stewart trying to come out and get, somewhere about $13 to $15 million. And the question really becomes, do you give him that much money? Do you give another defensive tackle that kind of money? And for me, I'm just not sure if we do. And I think there are other options, especially, okay, if Anthony Richardson's on his rookie contract, okay? So if you're going to give a defensive tackle more money, right? Two defensive tackles, DeForest Buckner making a lot of money. He's also going into the last year of his contract. So if you're going to give another defensive tackle a lot of money and kind of hinder yourself, then the guy I think we should go after, honestly, is Christian Wilkins, who, from what I've heard, seems like a long shot to go back to the Dolphins. And this is a guy that throughout his first couple years in the league wasn't the biggest pass rusher from the interior, right? 2 sacks, 1.5, 4.5, and 3.5 in his first 4 years. But there's also a guy that, as he's been able to stay on the field, look at 2021 and 2022 again, 89 tackles, 98 tackles. This is a guy from the interior of the defensive line. He's a great athlete from the interior of the defensive line and somebody that can make a huge impact from the inside, just like Grover Stewart can. But in Grover Stewart's entire career, he has 9 sacks. Okay, Christian Wilkins in 2023 had 65 tackles. He had 9 sacks just in 2023. So I need to let it be known, like I'm a Grover Stewart fan. I think Grover Stewart is an absolute dog. I think Grover Stewart makes a difference on the defense. I think he's one of the most important pieces of the defense over the last couple of years and what we've been able to do, right? Stopping the run is a part of the game, and Grover Stewart helps us be able to do that. I think Christian Wilkins next to DeForest Buckner would be a lethal duo. It would cost more, but then you think bringing in Christian Wilkins, whatever he's going to warrant and pay, probably not going to be as much as these other guys, right? You might end up having to pay him, maybe you pay him Justin Simmons type money, $23.5 million. Maybe he gets Quentin Williams money at 24. He might get a big time contract, but with DeForest Buckner being on the last year of his contract, possibility of him maybe wanting to go somewhere else if he feels like he can win somewhere else. I think the guy you could roll with going forward could be Christian Wilkins, at least for a couple of years. So what this conversation really comes down to is like, is Grover Stewart worth the money, right? The amount of salary cap that he's going to take up, or do you just give that money to somebody else? And I think giving that money, allocating that to somebody else, and even if it's a little more, I'm down with that. The reason for that being because we've talked about so much about the Colts needing a better pass rush, at least on this channel, on this specific channel. Colts need a better pass rush. I understand a lot of people think that the secondary needs upgrades everywhere. We just continue to need to be better in the secondary. If you get a better pass rush, you don't have to be great in the secondary. You just have to be good enough. So for me, if we can get more guys that can get after the passer, more guys that can rush the passer, and somebody who can play well in the run game from the inside, I think that's something the Colts should seriously consider. Now, will they, with Christian Wilkins' price tag, is that something they will consider? That's a great question. I don't know if they're going to go that route. Is Chris Ballard about that life? Not really sure if that's the case, but I could see a world where Christian Wilkins makes us a very good football team. I understand Christian Wilkins and what he can do as a pass rusher, and you add that to Kwity Paye and Samson Ebukam, DeForest Buckner, Dio Dangbo. And I think in that instance, the Colts would be a lethal defense, right? And the secondary would get better because we were able to get after the passer more. That's how I'm thinking about this Colts defense. We have to get better at consistent pressure. Consistent pressure. I will continue to say this. It's consistent pressure. You have to be able to get consistent pressure. The quarterback cannot continue to have 4 to 5 seconds to make decisions when we're playing them, okay? There's sure, every now and then DeForest Buckner will get there quick, or Samson Ebukam will get there quick. Sure. We need to be able to get after the passer at a more consistent rate, okay? And this kind of goes in line with what I've been talking about. I think we need to get, somebody that can rush the passer in free agency and then go to the draft for somebody in the secondary. And if it's not the draft, then yeah, L'Jarius Sneed. We've talked about that. But that, is more money out the window. I'd like to see Kenny Moore come back. Julian Blackmon's out there. Justin Simmons is out there. There are options in terms of free agency. So a lot that can happen. The Colts have a lot of money, but that's going to dwindle quickly with the guys that they need to pay and as much money as these guys are going to want. So we'll see what happens. I'd love to know what your opinion is on all this. You let me know down in the comment section, please. And of course, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you get notified as videos come out this week. Free agency, again, tampering period and free agency starts tomorrow. We're going to want to talk about all that. So make sure, again, you're subscribed with those notifications on. Of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.